Okay, the governor's hall. Hester Prynne went one day to the mansion of Governor Bellingham with a pair of gloves which she had fringed and embroidered to his order, and which were to be worn on some great occasion of state, for though the chances of a popular election had caused this former ruler to descend a step or two from the highest rank, he still held an honorable and influential place among the colonial magistracy. Okay, so he's not technically the enacting governor, but he's still one of the high members of the colony. So he still has the title governor, just like our presidents still have the title president after they are no longer in office. So he's still one of the high-ups of the colony, but he's technically no longer the acting governor. But yes?
Is Kelvin in there?
He is.
Can you come to the office for a minute?
Sure.
Thanks.
Another and far more important reason than the delivery of a pair of embroidered gloves impelled Hester at this time to seek an interview with a personage of so much power and activity in the affairs of the settlement. It had reached her ears that there was a design on the part of some of the leading inhabitants, cherishing the more rigid order of principles in religion and government, to deprive her of her child. What is the town talking about doing? Taking Pearl from her. So, yes, she has gloves to deliver, but her real reason is to go to talk to this man, right? About not taking her girl, right? If she named her Pearl because she's the only treasure she has left, would she want her taken? No. On the supposition that Pearl, as already hinted, was of demon origin, these good people could not unreasonably argued that a Christian interest in the mother's soul required them to remove such a stumbling block from her path. If the child, on the other hand, were really capable of moral and religious growth and possessed the elements of ultimate salvation, then surely it would enjoy all the fairer prospects of these advantages by being transferred to a wiser and better guardianship than Hester Prynne's. So it would be better for Hester to take, if the child is of demon, to take the devil completely out of her path, because she's already stumbled pretty far once. We need to take all temptations out. And if the child is worth saving, shows herself worth saving, it'll be much better in a better Christian home than Hester can provide. So it'll be best for all parties for this to happen. That's what's being decided without Hester being part of this. As you know, that's a good thing to do. Among those who promoted the design, Governor Bellingham was said to be one of the most busy. It may appear singular, and indeed not a little ludicrous, that an affair of this kind, which in later days would have been referred to no higher jurisdiction than that of select men of the town, should have been a question publicly discussed and on which statesmen of eminence took sides. So they are talking about this in court, and everyone around town is talking about it. Is it anyone else's business? Should it have been? No. But everyone around town is, and all of the higher-ups are having this debate and taking sides. No, this should happen. No, this should happen. No, we should do this. No, we should do that. With other people's lives, right? Makes sense. Sorry, I lost my side. At the epoch of pristine simplicity, however, matters of even slighter public interest and of far less intrinsic weight than the welfare of Hester and her child were strangely mixed up with deliberations of legislators and active state. The period was hardly, if at all, earlier than that of our story, when a dispute concerning the right of property in a pig not only caused a fierce and bitter contest in the legislative body of the colony, but resulted in an important modification of the framework itself in the legislature. So they discuss issues such as the property of a pig in court. Those are the issues that are brought before these high-up powers. And so matters are decided such as this. So do the people in town have anything better to be talking about? No. Full of concern, therefore, but so conscious of her own right that it seemed scarcely an unequal match between the public on one side and a lonely woman, backed by the sympathies of nature, on the other, Hester Prynne set forth from her solitary cottage. Okay, so it's the public against Hester Prynne, with only nature being the sympathetic force. We saw that in the beginning with the rose bush, right? So nature is the only thing she has on her side. Is this going to be an easy fight? No. But she's leaving to go do it. Little Pearl, of course, was her companion. She was now of an age to run lightly along by her mother's side, and constantly in motion from morn till sunset, could have accomplished a much longer journey than that before her. Often, nevertheless, more from caprice than necessity, she demanded to be taken up in arms, but was soon as imperious to be set down again, and frisked onward before Hester on the grassy pathway, with many a harmless trip and tumble. So she's old enough to run by herself, and she can go a long way. She has a lot of energy, but every once in a while, like older toddlers do, they still want to be held. Pick me up. I'm tired. They're not really tired, but they just want to be held. Put me back down. Pretty normal in that fact. And she trips and stumbles just like most kids. So she is somewhat normal. We have spoken of Pearl's rich and luxuriant beauty, a beauty that shone with deep and vivid tints, a bright complexion, eyes possessing intensity both of depth and glow, and hair already of a deep, glossy brown, and which in after years would be nearly akin to black. There was a fire in her and throughout her. She seemed the unpremeditated offshoot of a passionate moment. Her mother, in contriving the child's garb, had allowed the gorgeous tendencies of her imagination their full play, arraying her in a crimson velvet tunic of a peculiar cut, abundantly embroidered in fantasies and flourishes of gold thread. So much strength of coloring, which must have given a wan and pallid aspect to the cheeks of a fader bloom, was admirably adapted to Pearl's beauty, and made her the very brightest little jet of flame that ever danced upon the earth. So we already talked about a few times how she spent a lot of money on Pearl's attire, and that she dressed Pearl in a certain way when they went out on purpose. How's Pearl's dress? What color is Pearl's dress? There's gold thread. What's the overall color? Crimson velvet tunic. Red. What else is red with gold? So what does she dress Pearl as? A little flame. Her living scarlet letter. But it was a remarkable attribute of this garb, and indeed of the child's whole appearance, that it irresistibly and inevitably reminded the beholder of the token which Hester Prynne was doomed to wear upon her bosom. It was the scarlet letter in another form, the scarlet letter endowed with life. The mother herself, as if the red ignominy were so deeply scorched into her brain that all her conceptions assumed its form, had carefully wrought out its similitude, lavishing many hours of morbid ingenuity to create an analogy between the object of her affection and the emblem of her guilt and torture. But in truth, Pearl was the one as well as the other, and only in consequence of that identity had Hester contrived so perfectly to represent the scarlet letter in her appearance. So Hester knows what she's doing, and it's kind of morbid to do this, right? To make her another token of your sin, but everyone's looking at her like that anyway, so she might as well look pretty while she does it. As the two wayfarers came within the precincts of town, the children of the Puritans looked up from their play, or what passed for play in those somber little urchins, and spoke gravely to one another. Behold, verily, there is the woman of the scarlet letter, and of truth, moreover, there is the likeliness of the scarlet letter running along beside her. Come, therefore, and let us fling mud at them. Such nice little children. But don't worry. But little Pearl, who was a dauntless child, after frowning, stamping her foot and shaking her little hand with a variety of threatening gestures, suddenly made a rush at the knot of her enemies and put them all to flight. She resembled in her fierce pursuit of them an infant pestilence, the scarlet fever, or some such half-fledged angel of judgment, whose mission was to punish the sins of the rising generation. She screamed and shouted, too, with a terrific volume of sound, which doubtless caused the hearts of the fugitives to quake within them. The victory accomplished, Pearl returned quietly to her mother, looking up, smiling, into her face. "Don't worry, Mom, I've got this." And then she starts yelling and screaming and runs at them like full force, making them all run in different directions. And she's yelling and hollering the whole time like, "I'm going to get you." But, just this little girl running madly at them. And as soon as they all flee and she's happy with what she does, she walks calmly and quietly back to her mom, looks up, smiles, ready to go. It's all good now. Taking care of the issue. Without further adventure, they reached the dwelling of Governor Bellingham. This was a large wooden house, built in a fashion of which there are specimens still extant in the streets of her older towns, now moss-grown, crumbling to decay, and melancholy at heart with the many sorrowful or joyful occurrences, remembered or forgotten, that have happened and passed away within their dusty chambers. Then, however, there was a freshness of the passing year on its exterior, and the cheerfulness gleaming forth from the sunny windows of human habitation into which death had never entered. It had, indeed, a very cheery aspect, the walls being overspread with a kind of stucco, in which fragments of broken glass were plentifully intermixed, so that when the sunshine fell aslantwise over the front of the edifice, it glittered and sparkled as if diamonds had been flung against it by the double handful. The brilliancy might have befitted Aladdin's palace rather than a mansion of a grave old Puritan ruler. It was further decorated with strange and seemingly cabalistic figures and diagrams suitable to the quaint taste of the age, which had been drawn into the stucco when newly laid on, and had now grown hard and durable for the admiration of after times. Pearl, looking at this bright wonder of the house, began to caper and dance, and imperatively required that the whole breadth of sunshine should be stripped off its front and given to her to play with. So the outside of this house, it's a huge house. It's wood underneath. It's an older style house, so they would have been abandoned too long into the future, 100 years, because it wouldn't withstand it. But then it has stucco. That's a form of stucco to keep the weathering of the wood, right? And within that, they take glass shards. So that way when the sunlight hit it, it sparkles. Sounds like a Puritan house, right? With nothing to make you happy or fancy, right? And not only that, but it has pictures drawn into the house so that way when it dries, it's like murals in the front of his house. Sounds like a normal Puritan house for a Puritan leader, right? Yeah, because, no one else could have a house this luxuriant or anything fancy like that, right? Hester and Pearl live in a little, one-bedroom cottage. But the governor, who's no longer the governor, he's just a higher up, right? He was the governor for a while, lives in a mansion that glitters in the sunshine. Makes sense, right? Little bit of hypocrisy. And we will read about more of his house and hypocrisy tomorrow.